Hi, and welcome to Morning Coffee with Pazan Academy. I'm Deanna, and today I want to talk to you about education, which is what we do here at Pazan Academy. But I want to talk about how kids are educated today versus how they were educated in the past, and what that means for an overall knowledgeable society. So before 1930 and even before 1900s, there was this tradition of what we call a classical education. And this education was an approach that dates back to the Romans and even the Greeks, and it is where you have three phases of education. There's the grammar phase, and this would be equivalent to our primary school education. There's the logic phase, which is the equivalent of middle school, and then rhetoric in high school. And the way that they would educate, and this lasted for thousands of years, is during the grammar phase, they would learn through memorization. Over time, poems and documents, historical facts, those would be memorized in the grammar phase. They would be taught grammar, obviously, and how to formulate the language in which they were speaking and learning in. For instance, in the United States, it was English, and they would learn proper sentence structure and about the different parts of speech, spelling, and they would do a lot of this through memorization and drills and these sorts of exercises. And what that does is that it allows the student to build on knowledge as they get older, as they pass through the different levels, and that knowledge is reiterated as well. Also, by memorizing these great works of literature and these historical documents, they would have this foundation of knowing these important facts or these names of these authors. And then as they went through school, they would be introduced to them again, but at a higher conceptual level. They would also be taught about science and math. And again, all of these skills would be built upon over time. So as they got into the logic phase, they would be familiar with a lot of the concepts already, and then they could understand them, and the integration and the dots would be connected at a higher level, because as children go through their schooling, their cognitive abilities change and they get more and more sophisticated as they get older. By the time they get to high school, they're familiar with the classic works. They've heard these names. They've studied history over and over. And so when they're learning things in this rhetoric phase, they learn how to argue. They learn how to make arguments. They learn how to make points. They have more sophisticated essay topics where they have to prove things or they have to come up with their own assessments on how things unfolded. But the knowledge that they're having is not something that is completely new. They've been introduced, and this is just added to their skill set over time. It's a natural progression of our human brains and how with knowledge we can build and understand on a higher level as we get more educated. Now, when they get to college, they have all of this foundational knowledge. They understand the parts of speech and grammar. They know how to write. They know how to formulate an argument. They understand mathematical principles. They have a foundation of science that has been unfolded over time. You're not going to learn things out of sequence. Everything is reiterated and integrated, and the dots are connected throughout the entire education prior to getting to college. That changes in the modern world, and over the 20th century, there's a decline in this sort of education that builds these skills up over time in a natural progression through an integrated education that we now call the classical education or the classical liberal tradition. So what's happening now? Things are taught in a disintegrated way. There doesn't seem to be a connection between the primary school learning, the middle school learning, and high school learning. And particularly by the time they get to middle school and definitely high school, students get to pick a whole bunch of electives, and those electives are taught. And so maybe they take a Renaissance class, but they don't understand the foundation of the Renaissance. They haven't studied in some detail the ancient Greeks and Romans. So when you're talking about the Renaissance and a return to classical values through humanism, they're not fully able to understand and integrate all of this information. So the outcome of this is we have students going into high school that are completely under or unprepared. They haven't learned all of the elements that you need to be a good writer, the parts of speech, how to formulate different types of essays. That isn't a focus anymore. Without this memorization of these classic works, they're not familiar with a lot of things. Particularly with history, a lot of students don't enjoy it, and that's because it is taught in a disintegrated way. You take the ancient civilizations, but you don't tie them to anything else. Everything is taught in isolation, and concepts aren't built on over and over again. So what do you do in the modern world if you want to have your students have this foundation of knowledge that seems to be lacking in a lot of educational systems? There's a way that you can do this, and that is to approach education, whether you're homeschooling or your students are going to schools, you can integrate a thematic approach. And so what you'll want to do is look at what they're learning or how you're planning out their education and come up with themes that will integrate all of the material. And as you go through the different grade levels, you can have a new theme for the following grade level, and that can connect back to the previous grade level's theme. And it's through this thematic approach that you can have an integrated education for your child, and you can help them connect these dots. And with this thematic approach, it can get more and more sophisticated as they go through middle school and high school. So how do you figure out what the themes should be? Well, you can have an overarching theme for a lot of their education. And for history, for example, the big question is, how did we get here? That can be the higher level theme. And then as you go through each grade level and focus on what they're learning, particularly say if they're learning about Mesopotamia and Egypt, you can answer that question as, what did these earliest civilizations, how did they contribute to how we got here today? For instance, the wheel was introduced in Mesopotamia, the calendar was in Mesopotamia, we have some astronomy that dates back, even some of our foods that we eat today were first introduced in these early societies. And so that allows this connection, and it also makes it relevant because a lot of students say, who cares? Why do we need to study history? Well, we absolutely need to, because we need to understand the past to know how we are today and where we want to go in the future and how we can get there. So I hope this has been informative and instructive and can help you kind of figure out what ways you can help in your students' education in order to make sure that they're going to be prepared not only for college, but also for the conceptual level thinking that they're likely going to be needing in the rest of their life. Thanks for watching. If you're enjoying our videos, please like them, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, let your friends know about us, and we have links to our social media in the description below. I'm off to work on some thematic-based curriculum. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.